Rey Hernandez is a co-founder of the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research on Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. He's also an editor and contributor to the anthology Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. His own experiences involving remarkable healing, non-human entities, and UFOs has led him to develop the hypothesis that a variety of contact modalities, usually considered distinct phenomena, are all related. And understanding what you're about to hear may very well change your life. Rey joins us. Hello, Rey.
Thank you for the invitation.
Well, Rey, you're relatively new to this field of non-human intelligence. So how did you get started? What prompted your interest?
It started in March of 2012 when my wife and I had an experience in our living room with an energy being that healed our 15-year-old Jack Russell Terrier, who we were going to be euthanizing later that afternoon. Very, very briefly, what took place was that my wife had been praying all night for a miracle. She, at that point, was deeply religious. She was born and raised in Mexico, hardcore Mexican Catholic. And so once she found out the night before, at about 8 o'clock, that our dog had become totally paralyzed, and we had called our vet, and we had scheduled the very next day for to euthanize her. It was then that she began praying all night, and I went to sleep. So in the morning, we both woke up. The dog was still totally paralyzed, and that was going to be her last day here on Earth. And so she carried the dog down the stairs, and once she got down to the stairs, she saw this physical object that looked like an upside down letter U. So it was like this, an upside down letter U, but it was roughly 1 foot wide by about 1.5 feet in height. It was silverish metallic, but it was phasing in and out of reality. It wasn't fully material most of the time, and it was semi-translucent. And my wife at that point thought it was La Virgen de Guadalupe, which is the Virgin Saint of Mexico, and she began praying right then and there. And then it did certain light configurations on her and shot off certain lights to the side. And at that point, she called me down, not because she was scared, but she wanted me to see her angels. So I totally ignored her. She went upstairs, pulled me out from my bed, and then I followed her down the stairs. She wouldn't tell me what it was. And then right in front of the living room, she disappeared right in front of me. The dog had disappeared. And all of a sudden, I had no peripheral vision whatsoever. It was only in a certain area I could see. Everything else was all dark. And there is what I now describe as an energy being. And let me describe it to you. It was roughly 2.5 feet wide by about 1 foot in height, made up of numerous colors, vibrating like in a mirage in a desert. You know, it was moving like that, semi-transparent. And then this being, immediately when I saw it, just totally controlled my consciousness to the point where I didn't care that my wife had disappeared, the dog had disappeared. I looked at it, I stared at it, and I said, bullshit. This is what you got me up for this crap, you know? And then I turned around. I said, I'm going to go to sleep. I turned around. I walked up the stairs. I went to my bed and immediately knocked me out. 45 minutes later, when I woke up, I was now fully conscious. And I ran down the stairs, and my wife, poof, popped back into reality, looked down, saw that the dog was running around, and she started celebrating in the middle of the living room. And the dog was completely healed to even before when she had become very, very ill, because for 2 years she had severe arthritis. She couldn't run, she couldn't jump, she was walking around gingerly, but now she was back like a teenager, running around the entire living room and house. And so, and then 2 months later, my wife had missing time. We didn't know what that was until 6 months later, when after our third major event, we had found out the name of this organization called MUFON. We had called MUFON to investigate our case because we were seeing UFOs left and right. having all of these paranormal experiences. And so this elderly lady, who was a retired school teacher, came by with her husband. Her husband is a retired hurricane center scientist here in Miami. And she was the one that said, what happened to your wife is she had missing time, because I didn't know what that was until that point. And then because my wife for 45 minutes had no idea where she had gone. And so what happened after that experience, then my wife would call down her angels in the evening, especially one month that she stayed an entire month in Mexico. And lo and behold, each time this big gigantic UFO would appear.
Wow.
And
So
then,
so your wife had the ability to consciously connect with these beings.
yes, correct. And that happened numerous times. And it was quite instantaneous. I mean, within a few minutes, these large UFOs would appear. And then one time she saw these three humanoid looking beings that were 7 to 8 feet tall. They dressed in white monk's robes, and they floated right in front of her up to a certain point, and then they disappeared. And so she was having all of these experiences, precognition, tons of precognition. She detected a tumor in my back. She knew that our car engine was going to explode if we were going to be making this long trip. Finally, after her harassing me for an entire week and her canceling the trip, I brought it to the mechanic. The mechanic said, thank God you didn't go on that trip, because your engine would have exploded. And these are the reasons why. And so, and by coincidence, we were going to go to our very first UFO conference, and Kathy Martin was going to be there, and Grant Cameron was going to be there, and Denise Stoner was going to be there. I think 3 of the people that you interviewed, and also this other lady, a researcher, her name is Yvonne Smith. So it was about a 3.5-hour trip from where we lived in Miami. So, you know, it was canceled because of she just refused to go. Then I had to reinstate it again. So that was right before our very first UFO conference. So she had tons of these precognition abilities. And then what happened was 6 months after my initial experience in the living room, I called on my first UFO. And within 15 minutes, this huge, gigantic UAP showed up, and it was the size of a small football stadium. And there was telepathic communication back and forth. My daughter got to see it because it, whatever this intelligence was, put the voice of my daughter in my head that she wanted to see it. So I ran to the window. I started calling down my daughter, and she got to see it. As I said before, there was 3 friends of mine got to see it as well. And then there was telepathic communication between myself and whatever was the intelligence in this UAP. And then the way they got me to leave was that they put into my mind that I was being attacked by hundreds of mosquitoes. And then that never did occur, because my daughter told me later that that didn't occur. And when she said that, it was like the hypnotist snapped his finger and I woke up. I was in some type of semi controlled, conscious, unconscious type of scenario where I was fully aware of my awareness for a certain time period, and up to a certain point that I couldn't cross that bridge. For example, we couldn't take pictures of it, we couldn't take videos of it, but yet this is a huge object the size of a small football stadium that was literally right on top of my next door neighbor's house. And it was like that for 45 minutes. Everyone had cell phones. The teenager had her Apple iPhone, you know, in her hand. Okay. And so there was that type of controlling of your consciousness during all of these experiences. And then after that experience began 2.5 years of nonstop paranormal experiences for me. And then occasionally, you know, I get to call down a UFO whenever I want to, but I don't see a need to anymore. The last time was at the home of Mike Marburg, north of Tampa in Orlando, or who I believe you interviewed. If you look at his if you will read his log for February of 2018, for that month, you will see an entry by Rey Hernandez of the UFO that Mark and I and 2 other people saw that night. It was very, very large. That went right above us. So I have that ability still to this day, but I just don't see a need to call down a UFO.